Hey friends, Peggy Hall back with you from thehealthyamerican.org. Did you know that September is National Preparedness Month? Yes, that is apparently some sort of celebrated month in our federal government. And I was unaware of that, but here we have it, a proclamation on National Preparedness Month 2023. And this came from the occupier in chief, yes, the resident of the White House. And he's talking about historic flooding and wildfires and smoke and extreme heat. And there also, interestingly, is a disaster expo going on to celebrate this National Preparedness Month. Here you can see FEMA, and we're going to dive a little bit into this and into the whole concept of disasters and how interesting it is that certain companies can profit off of disasters. So let's do a deep dive on that in just a moment. First, let me bring you right on over to my sponsor message. And I wanted to let you know this is at trimwithpeggy.com. And there's a new study that reveals a surefire way to increase your odds of losing weight. And that might be easier than you think. Apparently, the simple habit of stepping on a scale frequently, like my husband does, means that you are more likely to shed unwanted pounds compared to if you didn't. Researchers believe that monitoring body weight this way leads to keeping your goals at the front of your mind, and it helps you recognize patterns that are working. Hundreds of thousands are looking to accelerate their weight loss with taking supplements like trimwithpeggy.com. I found this to be an exceptional alternative that uses naturally sourced and science-backed ingredients from nature, and it promotes reduced fat storage by speeding up the breakdown of fat. Ultimately, the natural ingredients work together to support weight management, reduced cravings, and a boosted metabolism. Most importantly, you can save up to 51% on it this month only. Plus, for a limited time, you'll receive several free gifts, including free shipping, a 60-day satisfaction guarantee, free VIP live health and fitness coaching for life, and 2 free ebooks titled Top 10 Foods That Burn Belly Fat and Top 8 Exercises to Reduce Belly Fat, all at no extra cost to you. So go to trimwithpeggy.com or click the link down in the description box below before this once-in-a-lifetime deal sells out. Friends, I want you to think about all of the disasters that have been in our modern time. I'm going back about, oh my gosh, almost 20 years ago with that 9.1 earthquake that hit Indonesia, and then there was the tsunami. And that is still considered one, probably the largest worldwide disaster because 250,000 people perished in that horrible incident. That was probably in my early days of waking up to what was going on. And I think a lot of people were jostled awake with these events that didn't appear to be natural or normal or consistent with what we've seen before. Remember that shock and emotional trauma can prevent people from thinking clearly and rationally when they're caught up in their emotional center. So when we see these images and we suffer kind of, virtually for those who have had such overwhelming loss and trauma, it can be difficult for us to look at things clearly with a sober mind and maybe catch the telltale signs of what might be maybe a magnified or orchestrated event. And I'm not saying that every single event that happens in nature is orchestrated and created. But I am saying that there are ways of magnifying those, of augmenting them, and definitely of profiting from them. And that is really distressing to me. Now, I do think it's important that people are prepared. I would consider myself sort of a mid-level prepper, and it gives me peace of mind knowing that I have an escape route, that I've got my paperwork in order, that I have an emergency plan with my loved ones, that I have food, in the case of sheltering in place, I have food and, fuel and whatever I need to stay put. And then, of course, if you need to hit the road, that's another area of consideration. You need your go bag, as they're called, something that you can grab and go. Again, in my follow-up video, I'm going to give you some exact how-tos. But right now, I want to think about this whole concept of an industry that profits from suffering, all right? And that would be the disaster industry. It's almost like the military industry, right? So this entire just incredibly massive industry, when we think about the military, you've got all of the military contractors, all of the, thousands, if not maybe millions of people that are employed in these jobs. And it's all around war and warfare, or ideally, peace and peacekeeping. And then you think about, and you may say, well, Peggy, that's needed. We need to have a military. We need to have protection. And I'm not disagreeing with you on that. It's just interesting that these massive industries are built up around such areas that include human suffering. Then we look at the disaster industry. And I agree that we do need to be prepared. And I agree that we do need people to help mitigate and help rebuild after these disasters. But it does bother me when we see, and we're looking at history now, that we see time and time again that things didn't roll out the way that people had wanted. So we look back at the tsunami in 2004. And I've got a picture here for you as well. I did a little bit of digging here. And, FEMA came in, and a lot of other disaster relief organizations. There were lots of fundraisers and money that was donated. And this image here says that the house that was given to them after the tsunami contains carcinogenic building material. All right, we heard that in the FEMA camps after Katrina in New Orleans. And then also here, there are, and in Haiti and in Puerto Rico and in other places where there were these massive disasters, people are still waiting for places to live. Their own homes they were unable to return to. In some cases, that land, like in Indonesia, my understanding is that they're not even building back on that very land. And they put these places for people to live like 20 miles from where they were working. And some of these villages, villages that were created and built, people aren't even living in them. In one case, there was never any plumbing put in, so they were uninhabitable. So that's a little bit of a topic for another day. But the point is, often in the aftermath of these disasters, we don't even see that the people are being helped. We've seen all of this. There's a lot of corruption with money that was mismanaged. The Red Cross was under, the highlight in a lens, because in the aftermath of Haiti, all of this money that was donated never went to build these places. And so that is very troubling to me as well. That's what I mean about profiting from the disaster, right? I don't have any issue with people that are going in to rebuild the homes, and plumbers and electricians and drywallers and architects and all of that. Obviously, that's needed. But it bothers me and it troubles me to think that there are those that take advantage of people in the aftermath of a disaster. That's why I don't do these GoFundMes. You will not see me sponsor a GoFundMe with my name on it or fundraise in that manner, because I can't be assured that I know where that money is going. So I know that there are some people that collected money for others, and I pray that it went exactly where it needed to go, but that is a very difficult thing to track. So just kind of stating that as well, there's so much, sadly, there's so much corruption in these areas. There are people that are going to take advantage, that are slimy, that are sleazy, that just pop up on the scene, and suddenly, they're experts in the area. And sadly, there are people that are going to pretend that they were victims, and they're going to have their sob story. And you get that duper's delight, which is they have that little glint in their eye and that little bit of a smile. And they don't look like people that just had a horrible trauma, but they look like people that are grifters and trying to take advantage of others. And then they put up their GoFundMe. So that troubles me as well. But what I'm looking at are the bigger industries. So let me take you right on over. This is really interesting. Today, this is going on in Anaheim, California, right? So not too far, my hometown, Orange County. And this is called the Disasters Expo USA. And it's at the Anaheim Convention Center. This is the second day, September 28th. And it is basically sponsored by FEMA and some of the other federal agencies that you can see here. And we look at some of the speakers, And they are the top speaker here. This guy is going to be speaking about an earthquake resilient building stock. Now, it's interesting to me when I start looking at things like this, my imagination starts to get carried away. And I think, oh, they're talking about preparing for earthquakes in California. So then my mind goes to, are we going to be having an earthquake in California? And am I prepared for that? And are you prepared for that as well? What I found very interesting about this, and there are dozens of speakers here, is this section called Disaster Relief Zone. And when I look at the exhibitors, we've got PM Green Energy LLC. We've got Mobile Modular, and we've got Continest. Now, this Continest probably is going to ring a bell for you because this is the company from Hungary that is providing these modular homes in Lahaina. And I did an entire video on this. Here they are, these container homes. They were flown in on a NATO plane, which is also very curious to me. And they came from Hungary. This organization here, it's called Ohana Hope Village. And this is from the the name eludes me right now, but I did a whole video about who is partnering with the Ohana Hope Village. And they are working with homeless people. Here it is, Family Life Center. They've been working with the homeless for some time. And now apparently they've shifted into those that are homeless because of this disaster. So I have an entire video about it. But Continest was in the news because they provided, or people purchased these container homes. There you can see from this Continest. Here's another one, PM Green Energy. And what they do is they provide, again, these types of modular homes through FEMA. And let's see, the next one we have, so that was PMGE. Mobile Modular here also provides these homes, modular homes. And I believe that they have contracts with FEMA for this kind of thing, because FEMA also has built these kinds of modular homes, or they've provided them in the aftermath, for example, in California, after the devastating fires that we've had here, and also in Oregon and in other places. So I think it's important that there are vendors that can provide these kinds of materials in the aftermath of disasters. But wouldn't it be horrible if some of these were orchestrated or augmented, magnified, in order for these kinds of industries to flourish? I know, it kind of sounds like a little bit of a conspiracy theory. It just is the way that my mind thinks sometimes, that there is actually a month that is dedicated to disasters. And during this month of disasters, there just happened to be a disaster expo in California. And one of the main speakers is speaking about earthquake preparedness. We have not had a major earthquake in California in years. Of course, we saw the devastating earthquake in Morocco. Definitely something happened. I'm still digging into that because a lot of the images and the footage does not align with my experience of what earthquakes are like. But that was massive. Of course, there was a massive, devastating episode of flooding in Libya. I'm still digging into that. It's just absolutely mind-boggling what's going on. And and I know that they are going to be blaming it on the global swarming, on climate change. And I absolutely agree with climate change. It happens 4 times a year. There's spring, there's summer, there's fall, and there's winter. And that is climate change. Absolutely, we have seen very extreme events that possibly could be natural. They possibly could be created, and they possibly could, for example, one who's monitoring this, those that are monitoring this, could see that something is stirring, and then they have the ability through their weather manipulation. There are many, 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 many patents on weather manipulation, not only held by Americans, but by others. So that is also on the books. Now, my intention in this video was to just bring this to your attention that there is a disaster month and there is a disaster expo going on this month. And isn't it interesting that we just have had some massive disasters worldwide? This also ties in to one more aspect I want to share with you, which is that Build Back Better. So I did a little bit more research on this, and I'm actually surprised that I didn't know that in 2022, there was a Build Back Better Act of legislation, which was passed and signed into law in August of 2022. And that was related to that Inflation Reduction Act, which actually resulted in increasing inflation. And this Build Back Better was, they wanted to increase taxes on corporations from 21% to 28%. You may be saying right now, good, those greedy corporations should pay more. But I want you to think about that a little more deeply. Corporations include your corner dry cleaner, all right? The guy that owns the gym, somebody who owns an ice cream shop, the restaurant owner. These are corporations. These are entities that are owned in many cases by families or couples, you know, the mom and pop shops. These are corporations, and they are paying not only their corporate tax, but they're paying tax on the money that they are earning from their business. And think about this. If they increase that corporate tax to 28%, that is all of that money that would not be able to be reinvested back in that business where that mom and pop might open a second location. And maybe they would hire your brother-in-law, or maybe they want to have the whole thing retrofitted and your uncle, who's a plumber and an electrician, would be in there doing the work. So that's how our economy works. Our economy works by people who are creating value and solving problems and providing a service or a product, and people see value in that and they exchange money for that. So why should that person who owns a corporation be penalized by the government, and then those increase for their productivity, and then those increased taxes? You know what they're going to go for? Well, I made a little list here. They're going for things, they are going to pay for things like electric vehicle rebates, right? So people that want to drive an electric car, it's such a great idea that the federal government has to pay you in order for you to be able to afford that car. There's also universal preschool for 3 and 4-year-olds. Well, my opinion is that those 3 and 4-year-olds should be with their family, not in a government school. There are a lot of rebates for solar panels and all of that. Well, if the solar panels are so great, why do I have to foot the bill for my neighbor's solar panels? So that's what this Build Back Better was all about. And I can do a deeper dive on that later, but I thought it was interesting because it was tied into these disasters in that, let's go back again, almost 20 years ago, after the Indonesia earthquake and tsunami, they were talking about Build Back Better all the way back then. And it certainly has not, to my research and what I've found, it has not been built back really well at all, and certainly not better. All right, let me wrap up here, friends. And what I'm going to do is a second video where we're going to talk about, well, what do we do about all of this? All right, I want to give you some how-tos so that you can feel empowered and encouraged, educated, and inspired to not be stuck in the spin cycle, but to be educated on what's going on. Share this information with others. Keep your eagle eye out there to try to connect the clots, as I say, and then let's take action in a way that makes sense for each of us. All right, I'll see you in the next video, everybody.